This is an 8GB 4060 Ti, and this is a 16GB 4060 Ti. Several months ago, I made a video looking at the VR performance of the 8GB model in 12 different VR games. And while making that video, there were several instances that had me wondering whether or not the 8GB of VRAM on the card was preventing the GPU from achieving its full potential at the resolution, refresh rate, and settings I was using. Now with a 16GB card in hand, we're going to see how much more performance, if any, that additional VRAM gets us. In my 4060 Ti 8GB video, there were several games where I experienced stuttering while running those games at 120Hz. My suspicion at that time was the 8GB of VRAM were being completely used up, resulting in stuttering as some data was spilling over into system memory. The first game I experienced this with was Breachers. Using the 16GB 4060 Ti, this game ran great at 4704 by 2384 at 120Hz with anti-aliasing at 4x, which is the same settings I achieved in the 4060 Ti 8GB video. I did try to bump anti-aliasing up to 8x to see if the additional VRAM would help in that department, but that put our performance right into the toilet, so I backed it off to 4x again. Looking at the VRAM usage in MSI Afterburner, I was only seeing a little over 6GB of usage. So my theory about the VRAM being the reason I experienced stuttering with the 8GB card wasn't looking so good. I then swapped the 8GB card back in, and it performed exactly the same in this game as the 16GB card. There was no stuttering at 120Hz this time around. I then, of course, needed to see how things would go in the other games I had stuttering in last time, and all of them ran perfectly this time around. Looking at the VRAM usage in those games, about half of them never exceeded 8GB of usage. So it appears the stuttering I experienced the first time around was the result of either a driver issue, or what I feel is more likely, the result of the Oculus software not yet being optimized for the 4060 Ti. Red Matter 2 was another game that I experienced stuttering in with the 8GB 4060 Ti in my original video, but ran smoothly with the 16GB card at 120Hz at 4704 by 2384 with the resolution scale at 1.0 and both indirect and dynamic shadows turned on. Comparing it side by side with what the 8GB model was able to do, these are the exact same settings, so the additional VRAM didn't do anything for us in this game either. I do want to note that since my first go-round with the 8GB 4060 Ti, Red Matter 2 has been updated, adding enhanced lighting and bloom, which I quickly noticed made a significant impact to our GPU performance when those effects were being displayed. In areas where I didn't have any issues at all last time, the enhanced lighting pushed both the 8GB and 16GB cards a little harder and cut into our frame rate a bit at times. Most of the time, the 4060 Ti ran this game just fine at the settings I've laid out, but if you're an eye candy lover like myself and don't want to turn the resolution or graphics quality settings down, to prevent any kind of frame drops, you'll probably want to go down to 90Hz. Like Breachers and Red Matter 2, Pavlov stuttered at 120Hz last time. But like I said, this time it ran great at the settings listed on screen now. I do feel like I pushed the settings up a little higher in this game than I probably should have, because I did get some frame rate drops here and there, but overall performance was good. Looking at the VRAM usage, I did see the 16GB card exceed 8GB, where the 8GB card obviously stayed below that. System RAM usage was a few hundred megabytes higher with the 8GB card, so we may have had some spill over to system RAM there, but it didn't adversely affect game performance. As you can see, performance was identical between the two cards. The last game I had stuttering with at 120Hz in my first video was The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. And again, like I've already said, this time around I did not experience any stuttering with either the 16GB or 8GB cards at that refresh rate. Just like the first three games we've talked about, this game also ran at the exact same settings on both the 8GB and 16GB models of the 4060 Ti. Looking at the VRAM usage, this game consumed about 1GB less VRAM on the 8GB card, but having more VRAM available didn't seem to give any kind of advantage to the 16GB model. While I did not include it on the overlay, I did monitor the application's system RAM usage, and it was nearly identical between both cards, with both of them using around 6 gigabytes. Yes, the 8GB card is showing significantly higher RAM usage than the 16GB card in these captures, but that is total system usage, not just what the game itself was using. So anyway, for whatever reason, my system was using a couple more gigabytes of system memory while I was capturing that footage than when I captured the 16GB card footage. The graphics cards we've been looking at in this video are the Asus Dual RTX 4060ti OC 8GB and the Zotac Gaming RTX 4060ti 16GB AMP using Nvidia's 537.34 driver. As usual, these cards have been tested in my Ryzen 7 5800X3D test PC with 32GB of Corsair Vengeance DDR4 3600 CL16 RAM and resizable bar enabled. The 16GB 4060 Ti ran Beat Saber at 4704 by 2384 at 120Hz with the render scale set to 1.5. In most songs, I was able to set the render scale to 1.6, but songs that have a lot of extra background effects, asynchronous space warp would kick in from time to time, dropping our frame rate down to 60 FPS until those more visually demanding segments were over. Setting the render scale to 1.5 though stopped this from happening, and we were able to maintain a stable 120 FPS at all times, and the game still looked really sharp. Once again, the extra memory on the 16GB card did nothing for us, as Beat Saber only uses around 5GB of VRAM, so 8GB is plenty for this game. The last game I tested, the 4060 Ti was able to run at 120Hz at 4704 by 2384 was Contractors. The 4060 Ti was able to run this game with all the settings at Ultra, except for anti-aliasing, which I set to medium. But as you can see, these settings did push the GPU right to the ragged edge. For the most part, it was able to churn out a steady 120 FPS. But there are some areas in the game's built-in maps that pushed it over the edge, and asynchronous space warp would kick in and cut the frame rate in half until I got out of those areas. As for the VRAM usage, Contractors consumed less than 8GB, so once again, the 8GB 4060 Ti was able to match the performance of the 16GB model without a problem. I'm still a noob with Into the Radius, but I feel like I'm beginning to get it figured out. As for the performance of the 4060 Ti 16GB, it was able to run this game at 90Hz at 4704 by 2384 on high settings. In areas like this one though, with a lot of different environmental objects, you can see our performance headroom almost completely evaporates. But this was the worst performance I saw while running my tests. Comparing it side by side with the 8GB card, we had very much the same performance. Into the Radius did use more VRAM when it was available on the 16GB card, but I was able to achieve the same settings and performance with the 8GB card, so it seems more than 8GB of VRAM is nice to have, but not a necessity to run this game. While doing my testing for this video, I found Life Alyx loves VRAM. The longer I played it, the higher I saw my VRAM usage number go. Using the 16GB card, I reached over 14GB of VRAM usage before finishing my test. Running through the same level with my 8GB card, I saw VRAM usage top out around 7.5GB with no noticeable difference in gameplay or visual quality between the two cards. Both the 8GB and 16GB 4060 Ti ran Life Alyx at 4704 by 2384 at 90Hz on the high fidelity preset, which made for an excellent experience in this game. Assetto Corsa Competizione is another game that used more than 8GB of VRAM when playing with the 16GB 4060 Ti. But like all the other games we've tested in this video, we achieved the same resolution, refresh rate, and game settings when using the 8GB card as well. When using the 8GB 4060 Ti, the application did use about 1 more gigabyte system RAM, but as you can clearly see in the side-by-side comparison, both graphics cards delivered a pretty solid 90 FPS, and overall game performance was identical between the two cards. Blade & Sorcery is one of those games I have a bit of a tough time deciding on which settings to use, because in some areas of the game we have tons of performance headroom available, but then when engaging multiple enemies, that performance headroom completely disappears. When asynchronous space warp kicks in this game, things actually still feel pretty smooth. So rather than try to lower settings to keep a solid 90 FPS at all times, I erred on the side of better visual quality for this one. Blade and Sorcery is another game that used more than 8GB of VRAM when it was available to it. But as has been the trend throughout this video, overall game performance was the same with both GPUs. When using the 8GB 4060 Ti, the application did use between 1.2 and 1.6 gigabytes more system memory though. And looking at the total system memory usage, it was a good 3 gigabytes more. So we may have had some stuff being offloaded to system RAM here that the 16GB card was able to maintain in VRAM. But like I already said, game performance was exactly the same with both cards. So even if Blade and Sorcery is offloading stuff to system RAM, it didn't negatively affect gameplay at all. The 4060 Ti 16GB was able to run this flight over Sedona, Arizona in Microsoft Flight Simulator at 72 Hz at 3456 by 1744 with the render scaling, world scale, level of terrain detail, and objects level of detail all set to 100 and every other setting at its lowest value. These settings pretty well maxed out the 4060 Ti. As you can see, our performance headroom is right on the cusp of falling below 0%, and our GPU usage is in the mid to high 90s. This of course meant when we switched to the Discovery flight over New York City and the 4060 Ti was no longer able to keep up, asynchronous space warp kicked in and cut the application frame rate in half. Comparing side by side with the 8GB 4060 Ti, you can see we have the exact same performance. So once again, the additional VRAM isn't doing anything for us in this game at the settings I tested at. That being said, I should remind you I tested with all the game's quality settings set to their lowest value. So for someone who wants to turn those up, the additional VRAM may prove to be advantageous. Lone Echo 2 was the one and only game of the 12 I tested that actually benefited from having 16GB of VRAM as opposed to 8GB. First of all, both the 16 and 8GB cards were able to run this game at 3936 by 1984 at 72 Hz using the game's high graphics quality settings. However, the 16GB card was able to turn MSAA up to 4x, where the 8GB card was not able to run MSAA at all. The other thing I ran into while running my tests with the 8GB card is asynchronous space warp would occasionally kick in when the game would reach 8GB of total VRAM usage. I say it would kick in occasionally because it didn't happen every time. Sometimes the game would continue to run fine, while other times the frame rate would drop in half and would not come back until I restarted the game. I'm not 100% sure this is due to maxing out the VRAM on the 8GB card, but during my tests with the 16GB card, I didn't run into this problem, so it appears 8GB of VRAM isn't quite enough for this game at the high graphics quality settings. Turning Lone Echo 2's quality settings down to medium did help get rid of this problem on the 8GB card, and the game still looked great. But running these tests is all about finding just how far you can push a GPU. So that's what we do. So is the 16GB 4060 Ti worth the extra money Nvidia wants for it? In my opinion, both models of the 4060 Ti are overpriced, and I also feel the 8GB model shouldn't even exist. Whether either of them is worth your hard-earned money is entirely up to you though. My hope is simply that I have provided you with the information you need to help you make an informed decision. Subscribe!